Hello, fellow lovers of the liminal and the weird, and welcome to another video by Liminal Spaces. Today, we are going to be talking about one half of the Tor double novel number 11, which is James Tiptree Jr.'s Houston, Houston, Do You Read? And today, I'm very excited that I am able to have Richard Rempel here on the channel with me. This was a happy circumstance because unbeknownst to either of us, we both picked this book and read it in the same week, which was absolutely wild. I think I did a what I'm reading video, and Richard commented and said, I just read that. And then he had already recorded and uploaded the next day a book haul where he showed off this exact same book. So because of that,
what a coincidence, right?
Like, yeah, coincidence.
Of all the thousands, maybe millions of SF books that we would read the same one that week.
Yeah. Did you find it recently? Is that why you read it?
Yeah, I'd found it on my trip where I was doing a road trip down in Western Canada. And because I had just finished a large book on that vacation, I just thought, hey, you know what? I'm on vacation. I don't really have tons of time for reading because of the things we were doing. We're doing a lot of visiting with relatives. Hey, I could read. There's 2 novellas in here. I could read one, and if I have time, read the other. And so that's why it lined up right after purchasing it.
Yeah, I've had this for years, and I just was standing in front of my shelf, which I do sometimes, trying to figure out what's going to happen. And I was like, I don't know, Tiptree Jr. And I looked, it was 90 pages. I was like, that's perfect. 94 pages, I think. And yeah, I grabbed it. And did you start with Tiptree Jr. or did you start with Russ?
I did. I started with Tiptree, and those 94 pages, the font is large too.
Yeah.
So 94 pages is probably more like realistically a 50 to 60 page book.
Yeah, this is like a novelette.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's an award-winning novella. I'm sure you're going to talk about that.
I am, if I don't drop it. There we go. Yeah, you can see here that it won the Hugo and the Nebula. 1977. I think it was 77 for the Hugo and 78 for the Nebula. Yeah. And the cool thing is, of course, is on the other side is a Hugo award winner as well. But we'll talk about these two together a little bit later. For now, let's get into a little bit about Houston, Houston, Do You Read by James Tiptree Jr. This is my first James Tiptree Jr. Was it yours?
Actually, it is.
Okay.
I've collected quite a bit of Tiptree, but I have not read any short stories or novels yet.
Yeah,
I believe there's not that many novels. I think it's mostly short stories.
Yeah. I have like 1 or 2 novels, I think. But yeah, so this was my first time reading James Tiptree Jr. I've been wanting to read something from Tiptree for quite a while. So, and this was really a very enjoyable read. Let's do a quick synopsis of the story here. We open with a man named Lorimer, and he seems to be recalling an unpleasant memory from his childhood where somehow he either runs into or is pushed into the girl's bathroom, but his what's the YouTube word to use here?
He's exposed as he's going to the bathroom and then realizes he's in the girl's bathroom.
Well, yeah, but it's strange because the way it's presented in the book, he is pushed in or runs into the girl's bathroom with his member already out and in his hand. It's not really direct how this happens, but it is a very interesting memory because all the women standing around him laughing seems to be kind of this core memory that was very destructive for Lorimer. So we start with this really embarrassing moment for Lorimer, and then we are suddenly pushed to or jump to this cabin in a spaceship, and there's a lot of people in this spaceship. It feels like there are 2 crews, one that was kind of all male and one that was male and female that are mixed together. and they are having a good time, and Lorimer slowly begins to realize that he's been drugged, and that maybe all of the people on his crew have been drugged, but he's feeling good and it feels all right, so he's kind of going with it. And then we start to get the background of how these two crews met and how they came together. And this is where the novel really picks up. So it's the 80s or the 90s, which when this was written was in the future. This was written in 77. So it's the last 2 decades. And the Earth has launched a mission to go around the sun once, I think is the point of the mission, to just do one orbit of the sun and come back. And the name of the ship is called Sunbird. And it's a very small ship, and it has a crew of 3 men. The science officer is Dr. Oren Lorimer. He's our point of view character, our protagonist. And his commander is Major Norman Davis, who goes by Dave. And then Captain Bernhard Gear goes by Bud. I don't know what maybe he was flying or something. I don't know what Bud did on the ship. It didn't really go into that. But they have been traveling for a while. They've been eating the same food. They're in a very small ship. They're kind of on top of each other. And they go through a solar flare, and it kind of messes with their systems, and they don't know what's going on. So Lorimer has been under a lot of pressure to figure out how to get them back to Earth, now that the ship has been damaged from this solar flare, and the window has been almost completely covered, so they can only see out of this like little corner of the window. It's really wild, and he's using this little corner of the window to calculate where Earth is, and they're trying to get back to Earth. There's a lot of stress, and right away Tiptree introduces this concept of the difference in genders and how genders react to each other and think about each other. And this is in the first couple of pages in that weird party scene that we start the story with. And here we are introduced to the concept also through the embarrassing memory that starts this narrative from Dr. Lorimer. This idea of how Dr. Lorimer feels about kind of his own masculinity. And he has trouble with Bud and Dave, who seem to be very typical 70s, 80s men. Yeah, go ahead, Richard. Jump on in.
I was just going to say one of them is, I believe it's Dave, is very much a very religious person.
Yep.
And so he represents a very religious view of gender and relationships. And the other one is more of an aggressive male type stereotype.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. And this first scene that we have with Lorimer in the bathroom, it's unclear, but it seems like bullying might be involved because the word pushed is used. But we slowly begin to learn that that Lorimer feels like being around men is kind of a constant fight for him because he is smarter than he is physical. And they show him great respect when it comes to science, I feel. That they're like, all right, Lorimer, now's your time to shine. You got this. Get us back to Earth. And they obviously respect him as a science officer, but there's these little jabs about his masculinity that continue to kind of occur that bother him.
Yeah.
But he's still doing his best as a scientist. They're in a stressful situation, and everybody seems to be working really hard to get themselves out of this stressful situation. They are continuously calling Houston, which is where we get the title, Houston, Houston, do you read? Because they want to figure out, where they are where they are. They don't know exactly where they are in space. And suddenly another ship pulls up on them. And this is when this novel really opens up, because the Sunbird was the only ship that NASA launched. There is no aliens that anybody knows about. Like, there should not be another ship. And this ship, they see it far off in the distance, and suddenly the ship tries to talk to them. And this woman named, I think Judy is the first name we get. This woman named Judy is like, hey, are you guys okay? Where are you going? What's happening? And they're all shocked and terrified, and they don't want to respond, but eventually they do respond. And these guys start communicating, and they find out that when they went through the solar flare that damaged their ship, they probably, well, what the woman on the other ship tells them is that they jumped about 300 years into the future, that they are known in history as a ship that disappeared and never came around. And the women on the ship are like, wow, this is incredible. Like, we learn about you guys in school. It looks like that you didn't disappear, that you jumped 300 years into the future. So they start learning that there is no Houston anymore, that the now mission control for all of Earth's space vessels. How many were there? There were like 4 or 5, right? Earth has yeah.
They also have a moon base, a lunar base,
Yes.
that is also very important to their space venture as well.
And that's where mission control is on the lunar base. Yeah, absolutely. So they slowly start to piece together that Earth went through a major catastrophe, some kind of sickness or plague, that there's not a lot of people left. I think 11,000 was the people that survived. And they haven't advanced a lot, but they've advanced a little bit, and they kind of are trying to decide what to do. And first off, they realize that Dr. Lorimer was looking at the wrong direction for Earth, because he didn't know how far ahead he had jumped, so he thought it was a different season than it was. So it eventually comes down to these people need to be rescued, and this ship called the Gloria rescues the astronauts after a lot of fighting with mission control, which is very interesting. And I don't know how much of this I want to give away before spoilers, but they rescue. Go ahead, Richard. Yeah.
I was just going to say, one of the things is, if you show your cover of the book, the image there is of the rescue of them coming out of their own spaceship. You see NASA on there. And I don't agree with the depiction of the Gloria, but it was a ship that had fauna, and it was a biosphere of sorts.
Yeah. Wasn't it more circular than it was?
I thought it was like a circular, longer tube.
Yeah,
that had a biosphere inside.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, this is a chunkier ship than I imagined. Yeah. So once these men enter the ship, the Gloria, by the way, the Gloria is a much bigger ship. They sleep in nice beds, and these guys have been like in a tin can for over a year. The Gloria has plants on board, but one thing that they begin to notice, and that really freaks out Dave, the captain of the Sunbird, is that there seems to be no structure, military hierarchical structure on the Gloria at all. And he learns that there isn't any on Earth either. And they start to feel like that there is something really strange going on, that something has changed, that is so large that they're waiting for the other shoe to drop to figure out. Because and of course this is written in the style of utopia, but is it a dystopia type of story? So yeah, they start becoming really afraid of what is actually going on. Go ahead, Richard.
There's a ominous tone here, even though these ladies and a gentleman named Andy have you rescued them and are so gracious to them and are helping them in this shift, not only of where they are in space, but also where they are in space time. And they've been nothing but generous with them, but still there's something that they seem to be not exactly saying, an omission of something that they should tell them.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dave especially is nervous, and Lorimer's feeling it too. And Lorimer's going back and forth. Yeah, the rest of the novel is absolutely incredible. The entirety of it was really fun. It's a great read. I highly recommend this.
It's strong. It's very strong. It's well deserved the awards that it got.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely, it really is. And it's funny that you brought this cover because these covers are all right. Both of them are all right, but it's weird. It wasn't the cover of this that grabbed me on either of them. It was the Tiptree Jr. All right. Yeah, both of us absolutely recommend this. Let's talk a tiny bit about James Tiptree Jr. Many people know that James Tiptree Jr. is actually a pseudonym for Alice Bradley Sheldon, and Sheldon made a huge splash in the sci-fi world of the 70s. She didn't really start publishing until 1973, but she lived an incredibly interesting life from birth all the way up to her strange death, which we'll talk about as well. Yeah, her father was a lawyer and a naturalist, and her mother was a prolific writer of fiction and travel books. And they took young Alice Sheldon all over the world. And eventually her mother started writing books. They went to like areas that hadn't really been contacted by Europeans at this point. So there's all these pictures of Alice meeting different tribes and all kinds of stuff. And her mom started writing children's books, and I think one was called Alice in Elephant Land and Alice in Jungle Land, which are great titles. Sorry. And Alice Sheldon at this point was very much interested in art, and she illustrated both of these books. She'd do drawings for these books. Eventually, she went to school for illustration. While she was trying to follow this illustration career, she met a young man, eloped, and married him. And then they got divorced in 1940. He was an alcoholic, and they just didn't work well together. After that, she joined the Women's Auxiliary Corps, where she became a supply officer. In 1942, she joined the United States Army Air Force and worked in the Army Air Force Photo Intelligence Group. After that, she was invited to join the CIA, and she worked with the CIA only for a few years as an intelligence officer. And while she was in the CIA, the coolest story for a science fiction writer to have been in the CIA at one point is awesome. While she was in the CIA, she met her future husband, her second husband, and that was Huntington D. Sheldon, and that's where we get Alice Sheldon from. Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is the second science fiction writer that I know of who was in the CIA. Do you know the other one?
I'm going to try. Hold on.
Okay.
It's not Bob Shaw, is it?
No, it's not.
Okay. It's
he's UK, so it wouldn't be.
Oh yeah, that's true. It's somebody like Kornbluth, or am I close?
Well, you have the first kind of sounding initial, right?
Oh dang it. Okay. I can't remember.
Cordwainer Smith.
Yes, Cordwainer Smith. And he wrote a book on like torture techniques or whatever.
Yeah, The Psychology of War is one that I know of.
Yeah.
His real name was Paul Linebarger. And so, yeah, I find it fascinating that we had two science fiction writers coming out of the CIA approximately the same time in the 50s to early 60s. So anyway, I just wanted to butt in and
that is incredible. It's strange because I feel like science fiction as a genre is often people's secondary thing. They're like, okay, I've done this. They're either great scientists or military, or and then they'll kind of step in and write some science fiction. And that's probably true with other genres as well. But I feel like when I look at science fiction, I notice that a lot. Like Gene Wolfe helped design the Pringles can, like just ridiculous stuff.
Well, and you know what? So many of them started in magazines. It was a huge way to
Yeah.
start, and that wasn't a lot of money, but it helped them get their chops, their writing chops, and then number of them went on into novels, and potentially then it could become a career. But yeah, if you're just a short story writer, it was really difficult to earn a living at
Yeah.
doing it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And Tiptree started the same way,
Mhm.
short stories. And um, she realized after she left the CIA that illustration wasn't really going to be her thing, which is a painful thing to happen when you realize the dream you had kind of set your life on isn't really what you were meant to do. So she started writing science fiction, and she started publishing them in magazines. And the name James Tiptree Jr., um, the junior her husband gave her, said add junior to it, which I think is a great touch. But she says she chose the name James Tiptree Jr. in order to protect her professional identity, because she was also writing academic papers as Alice Sheldon at the time. So she didn't want those two things to conflate. She chose the name to kind of hide who she was, because she didn't think science fiction was academically sound like her other work. But there's also kind of the question of her thoughts towards her own gender, which we'll get into. Well, I guess we can get into it now. Um, she was good friends with Ursula K. Le Guin, and they wrote a lot of letters together. And she was also good friends with the other side of this double, Joanna Russ, and she wrote a lot of letters to these women. Of course, not revealing her gender, and really made a splash. And if you want to see how much of a splash James Tiptree Jr. had on science fiction, I have here the second volume in the Dangerous Visions anthology by Harlan Ellison. And of course, Harlan Ellison was like, this is the most important anthologies we've ever made. He was very serious about creating a new wave, an American new wave with these anthologies. And one of the things that he was very serious about is who is the last story in the anthology. The last story is the most important story in his opinion. And in the first Dangerous Visions, I think it was Delaney that he said was the best, and I think that Delaney has the last slot. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I think it is. That's what he says in here anyway. But he does these introductions to each of the stories, and he writes this glowing review. First, he talks about how important the last story is in the anthology. But the one thing that he said that I thought was really, really interesting at the end of this is he says, Tiptree is the man to beat this year. Wilhelm is the woman to beat, but Tiptree is the man. And I love, first off, I love Kate Wilhelm. So it was wonderful to hear him giving props to Kate Wilhelm. But also I love that he's named another female writer as the man to beat for the year. And he didn't know, of course, at the time. And there's another quote I wanted to read really quick, and I made sure to find a way to pull this up easily. And this is from Robert Silverberg. And Robert Silverberg said, "It has been suggested that Tiptree is a female, a theory that I find absurd, for there is to me something ineluctably masculine about Tiptree's writing." So even Robert Silverberg himself felt like the prose proved beyond a doubt that this was a male writing. And of course, later on, I think it was in 1977, a little later in this year after this came out, that it came out that James Tiptree Jr. was a pseudonym, at which point she wrote a letter to Ursula K. Le Guin and to Joanna Russ and said to both of them, "Hey, I never lied to you in your letters other than my signature." And then in one of them to Joanna Russ, she said, I feel like I am a lesbian. I've always been a lesbian. And just kind of because they were so close through all this writing, admitted to them kind of who she was as a person. I haven't seen any I don't know how they reacted whatsoever, although I know they were lifelong friends. So they must have reacted okay to it, I guess. Which in itself is a wonderful story. Sorry, go ahead,
Mhm.
Richard.
I was just going to add that the way that she was discovered, she didn't reveal it. It was discovered because somebody followed the money. Somebody tracked down a paycheck or a record of a paycheck going out to uh, James Tiptree Jr., but it was made out to Alice Sheldon.
Oh, I didn't know
And
that.
that, I believe, is the way that she got outed as a
Yeah.
female writer.
Yeah, it's like Richard Bachman and Stephen King and the guy that
Mhm.
went through
Yeah.
the Library of Congress to find out that it was copyright under the copyright. It was Stephen King, not Richard Bachman. Yeah, um, yeah, a really interesting life,
Mhm.
and a very strange death. She did not like the concept of becoming dependent on anybody, so old age really, really frightened her. And she started talking with her husband about the concept of perhaps, and I don't know if we can say this on YouTube without getting demonetized, but they basically had a pact that they were going to unalive each other. I guess is the best way I can say this on YouTube. That sounds childish to me, but whatever. So at one point, her husband agreed, and they agreed that within 5 or 6 years they would do this. And then eventually in 87, I believe, they did just that. James Tiptree, or Alice Sheldon, James Tiptree Jr., shot her husband and then herself. And we still don't know. There's confusion surrounding this event as to whether or not this was 100% the choice of her husband. Some people have claimed that this was just straight up elder abuse. So this was a murder suicide. I said the word anyway. And others have said no, this was a pact that they did together, that they chose to do this. There was an award for a while that was called the James Tiptree Jr. Award that is no longer called that because of these strange circumstances surrounding the death of her and her husband. What did they change the name to? I can't remember. But yeah, now it has a different name. So really, for me, one of the most interesting lives of a science fiction writer I've come across. Looking this up and reading this wild story is, yeah, it just it adds to the depth and the meaning of this novel, for me at least.
I've been looking for quite a while for the biography of Alice Sheldon. Still haven't found it, uh, and I'm not ready to just pay for it. Uh,
Yeah. Right.
so so I keep asking. Sometimes my wife says, "Hey, can I look for something for you while we're in a used bookstore?" And I said, "Try biography. I'd love to see if there's James Tiptree Jr.'s biography there." And
Yeah.
she knows that it's Alice Sheldon who I'm talking about.
Yeah, that would be
So that's
incredible.
yeah. So that's one that I'm hunting for. That's, I guess, nonfiction.
Yeah. Yeah, usually I'm able to jump up and pull down whatever book people talk about, but in this case, I cannot. I've never seen that in the wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I bet it's interesting. Yeah, just a truly interesting writer, and it makes the themes of this book make a lot more sense with how much she tries to how much she considers, not even tries to, how much she considers gender throughout this book. I mean, that is the entire philosophy of this book is a question of gender and what happens when one gender is in control or another gender is in control, and what does it mean to feel like only half of a gender. And I think that's kind of true with Dr. Lorimer. And I'm not saying that Dr. Lorimer feels like he's a woman, because we never get that at all. What he feels like is that he's never enough that his own brain and lack of physical prowess make him less of a man. And we also see it with Andy. And I don't really want to spoil too much because I think we're about to get to the deep read. But yeah, I think that a lot of what was very interesting to Alice, James Tiptree Jr., is really on display here in a wonderful way. And this novel was incredible. I can easily say it's my favorite James Tiptree Jr. novel because it's the only one I've read. But there's another one I want to look for. The type of woman that's invisible or something. There's other novels that I would really love to read by her, but I think this is a great place to start. I really do.
And you can see how people were mistaken about who her own identity, because she inhabits those men's psyches so well as the women. Like it to me, it's a very remarkable piece with deep insight to both genders.
That is a great point. I felt like Dave and Bud were kind of caricatures, but Lorimer, I wouldn't read this and go, oh, this was obviously written by a woman, in the sense of how well she wrote the men, right? I do believe that she wrote Lorimer very well, and that yeah, I didn't. I mean, it's interesting that Robert Silverberg straight up said this has to be a male writer, right? Because of how well she writes male characters, I'm assuming is a part of it. Yeah. So yeah, I highly recommend this.
It was a great mystery in the 70s. Who is this James Tiptree Jr.?
Yeah.
Because he was or she was so good.
Yeah. I mean, Harlan Ellison, that if you have again Dangerous Visions, I highly recommend just go read the intro to that story of James Tiptree Jr.'s. Harlan Ellison is not the type that gushes, and boy, he gushes for James Tiptree Jr. He really, really loved her work. So, okay, I'm going to end it here, and we'll be coming soon with a deep read.